Today we're going to be talking about dating in the coronavirus era, but things are going to change. I think fundamentally, I think people are, especially for the next few weeks here, while you're quarantined, a lot of game and pickup stuff is about how can I impress and how can I do that, instead of that perspective that you're bringing here, which is like, what is she thinking?
There's a real conflation of how people are using social media and how people are using dating apps.
I have with me Haley, Quinn, who is a dating coach, a female dating coach. So you guys are definitely going to benefit from that perspective. She's also a TEDx speaker. She did really good talk on dating, and I've been checking out a lot of her content lately. She's really very aligned with a lot of the things that I teach you guys.
Thanks so much for having me, and like, what a weird time for dating we're living in right now. So I guess I'm hoping to bring a bit of like positivity, proactivity. So for all the guys that are probably sit at home, like loads of my male clients are kind of frustrated, feeling like, oh, I was just getting in the zone with this. I was picking up some momentum, and now, how am I supposed to date anyone? Because we're on total lockdown and we're living through a strange era in history. So I guess what I'm really excited to share with people is basically what you can do right now. Like, what can you learn? How can you stay focused? Because one of the best things I think that I can think about is when we're in a position like this and you have an opportunity, there's going to be a really massive temptation to not take any action whatsoever. It's going to be like, right, okay, I'm just going to get takeout pizza, Blitz, Netflix, all that personal development stuff totally out of the window. But instead, I think you can actually, if that's what, like, say 95% of people could do, if you could be the 5% that uses this time purposefully, you can really actually accelerate your learning and your growth. So hopefully I'll be giving some good practical advice on that for how to message women more effectively, what mindsets you can have. And also, as I work with women as well, giving you a bit of a behind the scenes insight into how women are experiencing dating.
So let's talk about this. I think what we can do in these times, what guys can do, and what the perspective is. We were just talking before that, both you and I aren't the greatest fans of online dating, of the dating apps. And I know that there's definitely, it's definitely a hard thing for most guys, right? I mean, because you're just being judged by looks, but even then, right? Still messaging, still sliding into people's DMs. I mean, there's still a lot of options available. What kind of things do you suggest that guys be looking at, and how can they like effectively do this? I mean, I guess like some of it is just thinking about, okay, I would imagine the approach changes a little bit because now it's, I don't know, it's a different situation, right? You don't want to take things too lightly, but at the same time, everyone, like you said, everyone's not going to be celibate.
So for the guys out there, totally hear you that online dating might not be your favorite thing in the world. I actually love to teach men and women. So I teach the other side as well, how they can go out there and meet you in real life. That's my whole thing. Yeah. However, there are some principles that will apply in, say, if you were meeting a woman in a bar or in a coffee shop, some of the conversation skills that you'll be leaning on there to make you stand out from the other guys, they're actually exactly the same kind of principles that you'll be working with if you were going to message a woman online. So and also I would say that during this time, online dating apps are not going to be having a quiet period. Like, we're going to see that and I would just look at it this way. You could be like, okay, I may not end up meeting many of these women in the immediate future because they might have concerns about the virus. That's okay. But what can I do? First of all, I can use this to develop my conversation skills. Messaging is also a really common area that I find guys can sometimes not quite understand how to create that tone of being kind of like, it's like a tall order for men, right? They have to be flirtatious, playful, leading, direct, but not too direct. So I think it's a really good opportunity as well to really fine tune your skills of, okay, how do I take this from a woman that I've just met to making her feel comfortable enough that she's going to want to meet me in real life, or that she's going to want to have a date experience. And that there's a few pitfalls that you can fall into, you can start to work on and develop. So I think we can look at, if you're open to online dating, let's look at how we can make you a profile that's far more successful. So I can talk to you about just a few quick and simple changes for that. Let's look at your messaging. How quickly should you ask her out? How can you ask her out at this time? How do you build that kind of conversation that she's actually excited to read your message versus you've got sunk to the bottom of her online dating or the bottom of her DMs? So I think that's all stuff we can work on. And then I think after that, we can talk a little bit around kind of some of the good mindsets that guys can have, and also how they can use this as an opportunity to further their understanding of women. So if we're starting with, I'm going to start appealing to the guys who are not totally closed off to online dating. And I do understand that with the online dating world, the stats will say that most online dating apps out there they've got a higher proportion of male users than female users. That's just a fact. Because of that, and because men are often the initiators in an interaction, we can have this weird disbalance where guys can feel like they're sending out absolutely tons of messages and not really getting any bites back, which can feel very frustrating. And then on the other hand, because I see from women's side as well, what does a woman get in response to that? She gets a ton of, she opens up her inbox. Imagine opening up an inbox and there's 50 unread messages every single day, and having to try and somehow filter through them to work out, okay, who is the guy that I should invest my limited time and energy into? Who's that guy going to be? So whilst you may think that women are living in paradise when it comes to online dating, there's endless options, and they're just like, no, 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 no. In fact, that's actually not the experience that lots of women have. Women face two really big challenges with online dating that's worth being aware of as a guy. First of all, women in the dating process are extremely conscious of not wasting their time. I think women feel under a lot more time pressure in this area of their life than men do, for biological reasons, social reasons. So because of that, she is going to be very decision focused. That's why as a guy, you may think that if a date is a 3.5 out of 5, you're like, well, I'll give it a go and see what happens. Whilst women, if the date isn't super strong, they may be more inclined just to think, you know what, I don't want to waste his time and I don't want to waste my time. So they're primed to make decisions very quickly. This often, of course, when any of us make decisions very quickly, unless we're one of these, maybe I would imagine actually you're pretty good at this, but I think a lot of people don't make optimum decisions because they're basing their judgments on a few very quick criteria. So that's going to be coming up for her in the world of online dating. So she's struggling to make a choice. She also women are quite cyclical, I think, in terms of their motivation and how they use online dating. If you're a guy listening to this, you'll probably have experienced this as you meet a woman, she's super chatty one day, loads of messages sent, and then it's like suddenly her communication falls off the edge of a cliff. And that's actually sometimes not at all a response to the man she's messaging. It's that she feels bored and frustrated. She hasn't got the experience she wants from using the dating app. Her motivation levels have run down. She's perhaps not introspecting about how she could change that. And so you'll find that women will, use dating apps a lot in a short period of time and then drop off them. So what does that tell us for guys? First of all, it means that we have to be quick in terms of progressing that interaction towards getting a more secure form of communication with her, like a phone number, or, if you're a European, we could do WhatsApp, and moving her off the dating app and moving towards a date. And for the guys out there, this is also very important for another reason, which is, you don't want to waste your time either. You also need to filter out the women you're chatting to see who are the women here who are genuinely looking to meet someone and really open to that. And who are the women who might be using this in a way that's more casual or more social. So we want to kind of create a good filter there. The other thing to remember is, if she's getting a ton of messages every single day, what have I got to do? Well, having a good profile, having an opening message that is unique and non-generic. And then, if she responds and she's wanting to chat, being able to match her pace and mirror that and communicate to her during the time that it's like a window of time or opportunity is going to open up. And it's about how you're going to capitalize on that. And whilst these are true for the online dating world, a lot of it is actually also true for the meeting women in real life world. So again, having a good, strong first impression, great fast, moving quickly towards the date. And I've got a simple few steps that guys can follow to get towards that. Being unique in your communication, all of these things, and also being aware that actually as a guy, it's actually not all on you to be, obviously be the best version of yourself, but guess what? Dating is a two-way process. So as a man a really high value man who's got all these other things going on in his life, you also really need to be filtering the women that you're communicating with and being selective in terms of who you invest your time and your energy into.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think, you know, yeah, especially I like seeing that other perspective, right? And that's one of the things when I was looking at your content, in your paid content too. I was looking at like seeing the female perspective. I think just gives you another viewpoint, because a lot of times, guys are looking at just their perspective, and even in, kind of game and all these things that they're learning from the male perspective. But to see, okay, think about it. What if you opened up your inbox and you had 50 new messages per day? What would you do? Instead of looking at this as a, oh, that, like you said, that they have it so good, to look at it as, okay, no, seriously, this is a real problem. It's kind of funny because I was just hiring someone. I did this in the Philippines, and I put it on this job board, and I got like, hundreds of applications, and that was not necessarily a good thing. It would have been better if I got like 4 or 5 really good ones, right? Instead, I had to figure out a process. What am I going to do? How am I going to? It actually stressed me out and got me to the point where I didn't even want to open up the program. I just wanted to close it and be like, okay, and yeah, so it kind of turned me away. So I think getting that perspective, I think, is really valuable. So, okay, so starting kind of at the beginning here, and then if, obviously, night game is out completely, pretty much, right? Day game, maybe, but I don't know. That's kind of iffy. that's kind of, I don't know about going up to someone and be like, hey, I just saw you stand there, and I got to tell you something. I don't think I have the coronavirus. I'm pretty sure I'm good, but no. So the online, so, with that, as far as profile, maybe we can start there, because I think one of the biggest concerns that I hear from my audience, from guys, and I understand it, is that, like, unless you're like super Chad, and the online is really filtering you based on looks. Like in person, yeah, you can go up, you can be confident, you've got your persona, you've got how you carry yourself, you've got all these other things and more. But when it comes to online dating, it's skewed a lot more towards looks. And so having good pictures in the profile, what can guys do, especially guys that are like, okay, well, I'm not a Chad, so I give up on online dating. I don't 100% subscribe to that. I think that a lot of it, I mean, I've worked with photographers, I've done modeling and stuff, and I know that a lot of it is how the image is shot. It's not necessarily the person. So what can guys do specifically? How can they test their photos? How can they know, for example, if they look better with facial hair or not? I think these are kind of questions. So.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's look at photos first, because, let's be honest here. Before we get to your profile, people, that's the first, she might read, what's her process going to be? She's going to open that inbox.
Yeah.
She's going to see if there's a message that kind of jumps out at her. And then when she's going to click through and look to your profile, the first thing she's going to look at is the photo. Or the photos, I should say. And I completely agree. I think whilst online dating, there are some things about it that make it more aesthetically driven. I would see it like, this is your personal brand, and how are you going to go about presenting yourself to the world? Like, how unique can you be, and how different? Because I think difference and having a profile that's well cultivated is going to demonstrate a lot about your lifestyle and your values. And I think for women, I don't go in a bundle on women are like looking for like the most traditionally, by Western standards, good looking guy out there. They are going to look out for a guy though who has put conscious effort into his profile, and who seems to have his life together and presents a particular lifestyle that the woman can kind of imagine herself engaging with. So a few really basic pointers to start with. First of all, you've got to have a good photo selection. I would say at least 4 images on there. If you don't, it's not really enough to build trust. People will think, oh my God, is that the only picture he has? Don't use the same photo again from 2 different angles. Make sure you're in a different setting, different outfit. If you are going to go down the route of using some professionally taken photos, mix them in with some more natural ones. That's really important. Photos taken in natural light often work really well. So not direct sunlight, that's not flattering on anyone, but rather than photos that are taken in venues that are dark, where you're surrounded by a group of friends, you've got a bit of red eye, or photos that are old. I know, like, if you're a more mature guy out there, you might be tempted to put in a photo that's from a bit of a younger stage in your life, but actually, because it's going to be pixelated and the image quality isn't as good as a new photo, you'd be much better just appealing to the many, many women out there who want a more mature guy and actually having a contemporary picture done. There are some cliches as well, you know, guys holding instruments, guys with small, cute little animals. But some of those times, those photos do perform better. Funnily enough, also approachability, I think, works well in the world of online dating. So having at least one photo where you're smiling or making eye contact with the camera can generally work well. Now, if you're a bit more niche, and you want to present yourself differently, you can go for a more radical strategy. Like I had one particular client, he was Pakistani heritage, slim build guy, kind of artistic and quirky. So definitely not your, like, I don't know what the American phrase is for this, but like, he's not your quarterback kind of dude, you know, he's totally different. But he really decided to use that as his strength. So his whole profile, he did like 5 pictures. He did a series of post-it notes which had something written on it that you swiped through. Wow. And then there was one really cool image of him lying on the couch with his guitar at the end. So again, he went for a very engaging, different route. So another way that you can look at this, if you want to get some inspiration, is you can check out some good Instagram accounts to see how people are presenting themselves on there. I think Instagram's changed how our perception of what a good photo is. I think women are also ahead of the game on this because they've got a whole bunch of female friends at every opportunity taking good photos of them. So they've got some really good photo content, whilst most guys will feel it's a bit cringe to even have a picture taken, you know? And I've actually seen amazing men in real life put up a picture of them and there's a freaking ironing board or something in the background. So be conscious of background as well. Remember, this is presenting your lifestyle. If there's a messy unmade bed or an ironing board, or you know, you're just in your house and it's like after 7 p.m. at night and it's dark outside, it's very hard to get a good picture under those circumstances. But you know what, most smartphones these days have got great cameras on them. Any recent iPhone has portrait mode. You can buy a tripod off of Amazon if you don't, or rope in a flatmate or a friend. And the setup cost of that is near zero, but you can do that and you can get much, much better quality images. So make sure you edit your images. There are services out there. One's called Photo Feeler. They rate your images for you. But it might also be better just getting a bit of getting someone else's secondary opinion on that. So that's how I would sort out the pictures. And also, as I said, if you do feel like, hey, I do not fit the model of the stereotypical guy, think about what your lifestyle is. Is it that you're super into travel? Are you super into fitness? Are you into business? How can you communicate that through the photos that you use? So where are you going to be? What settings are you going to be taking pictures of yourself in? Are you going to take a picture on like a cool date location? Would you be like in a business suit? Are you going to be doing a bit of skiing or hiking outdoors? Think about what your strong points are and also the kind of women that you want to appeal to in your photo selection.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and the photo feeler is one that I definitely recommend too. That to get different perspectives or different ratings on your photos. I've had a lot of guys that use that, and I like the idea of using different background, like showing your lifestyle as opposed to just the shots, and then and also the point that you made about the not just getting all professional photos. I think it's good, to get a professional photo shoot and have some of those nice ones, but otherwise it kind of looks weird. You're like, well, why is this guy all like, is this some kind of a scam? Is this like, or is this guy super vain that he only has like professional photos on there? It's not a real life person. I think maybe that illusion. Okay, so now with that, what about things like testing? Like I've always wondered about like testing facial hair, or I mean haircuts are a little bit more difficult, I think, but what about guys as far as facial hair and figuring out what works best for them? I think that's always
Well,
one that I get questions about.
well, another thing you could do, if you've got a bit of time on your hands at the moment, is you could do an A and B profile, on two different but comparable dating apps. You could also the ones that are quick to set up, maybe the like swipey ones. Do one with facial hair, one without. I think what facial hair looks good on a guy really depends on the man, and also it's
Yeah.
important to think about what kind of. Again, I would kind of use this as a good example of how you can exit this mindset of how do I, show her how great I am? How do I be like the most attractive to her? Instead, you could think, right, am I a facial hair kind of guy? Like, am I,
Right.
or am I more clean cut? And if I identify with that, what kind of women do I want to connect with and date? So often whether a woman has a preference for or against facial hair says less about your personal attractiveness and more about maybe what demographic she sits in as a woman. So you can start to think as well about what women you particularly want to appeal to.
Yeah, I really like that idea. The idea of setting setting your own standards in the frame, like the look that you want to have based on what you want to attract, just like we would do in business, right? It's like we would figure out, okay, what kind of customer do we want, as opposed to what will get us the most customers. It's the specific type of customer. So I like that. That makes sense. Okay. Now, what about when guys get, or well, yeah, actually, before we get to because I want to talk about messaging a little bit, but before we get to that, what about other alternatives, right? Because I know definitely a lot of guys, especially on the swipe apps, they get no success at all.
Mm.
And some of it is just, I mean, they're in competition with a lot of guys that are, if they're really on the kind of average level, it's really hard for those guys, right? I work with them a lot, and so are there other alternatives? How else can they meet women online? Like let's say that they were going to take an Instagram strategy and just start, how could they do that where maybe they might have more of an opportunity, or are there other alternatives that they could do at this time?
Right. So a few things. Obviously, if this was a different time,
Yeah.
and I hope that this time may return
Right.
in a few months down the road. Let's be optimistic. Meeting women in real life is awesome. Like I am so,
Yeah.
and I also am a huge fan of teaching women how to meet men in real life, or other women, or whoever they might like. The reason for that is I think all of those things of interpersonal connection, the hormones we get when we meet someone in person,
Yeah.
your non-verbal, your cues, your body language, tonality, all of that can come across amazingly well in person. So if you're not getting the success you want with online dating, don't be disheartened. And at another time, I'll talk to you about how to approach women in real life.
Exactly. Yeah.
For now, I would say that interestingly, Instagram was actually, there was a chart of like top dating apps, and Instagram was in there.
Yeah.
So there's a real conflation of how people are using social media and how people are using dating apps. So where Instagram could have some benefits are the follows, particularly with women who are kind of Instagram users. I would say generally it's going to be a slightly younger demographic of women. Sometimes if you meet them in real life, they'll be actually more comfortable, and they'll find swapping Instagram handles or following easier as a method of contact detail exchange than the traditional phone number. If you are a guy on Instagram as well, it's like you have a bit of there's a couple of ways it can benefit dating. First of all, lots of dating apps actually connect to your Instagram. So it's like if she's curious, but she kind of like, oh, I'd like to know a few more details about this guy, like what does he do? What's his lifestyle about? That gives you a really good, it's like an online portfolio. So it can actually bolster your online dating profile. It can also be used as a tool for dating within itself, in that if you have a very well cultivated Instagram profile, and yeah, this kind of stuff, I'm sure I've seen your Instagram as well, John. This stuff takes a bit of time to build up, but it's one of those things. I would say for guys using social media, I would either be like off the social media map and mysterious if you can't be bothered to maintain it, or if you are going to maintain it, do a good job of it. Don't have a bunch of weird photos taken at funny angles with 2 likes on them of your dog or something.
Yeah.
Think about a niche that you want to represent, whether that could be entrepreneurialism, it could be fitness, it could be travel, it could, wellness, whatever. And so pick a theme that you build your profile around. Then also you're going to need to have really good consistent photo content, and stories are also a brilliant way to build conversations and exchanges with women. It could be, if you have a reasonable following on Instagram, you know, maybe like a few hundred or more people in there, you could do the ask me a question function on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's actually a good way to fish for interactions.
Yeah, that's
Um,
good. Yeah, I like that.
like Likewise, and I always think it's probably in your interest, although it's going to take some time to build up, if you can build a great or a decent Instagram profile that's talking about an interesting topic that people want to engage with, then people are going to come to you. So then you can actually start to be the kind of rather than always be on this pursuit. If you are kind of looking to slide into her DMs, I would recommend trying to get something. The problem is basically if you're trying to DM a woman and she doesn't follow you, your message is just going straight into the drafts folder.
Yeah.
Some women don't check that. Others, particularly those that have got a lot of followers, they would just be overwhelmed again. It's back to that exploding inbox thing. And it's hard to sometimes not say something generic. So we got to kind of work around that. So is there a way that you could start a conversation with her, whether it was like an interesting comment on a picture that you make that's not that she looks pretty or like heart-eyed emoji, but actually something that's going to be a little bit different, by saying something and engage her in a conversation. Likewise, if you guys are using Facebook, if you're part of a community or a page or Facebook groups, anything that gives us a sense that we're not so like socially removed from a person is going to make them more inclined towards being responsive. So I think, again, if you've got some time in your hands, let's brush up your Instagram profile. Let's look at actually who's going to follow back, because that's going to mean you're going to end up in, you know, her inbox as opposed to her drafts. And if you are going to say something, whether it's a comment on a photo or a message to her, you want to avoid being that guy that's just like saying, hey,
Right. Yeah.
and instead, if I would think, like, also from your perspective as a guy, you want to be thinking, well, you know what, I've only got a certain limited amount of time and energy. There's loads of other cool stuff I'm doing in my life. So I'm not going to endlessly pursue a woman, you know, who's not open to that. I'm going to send one smart message, and if she's not going to respond, you know what, I'm going to let that go. Because what I find from working with women as well is, you know, I said half the equation is obviously how you communicate with her and how you present yourself. But the other half is she has to be receptive to it. That's her role in the dating process.
Exactly.
And it's very important as a man that you recognize that. I think a lot of dating advice can be quite misleading in that it puts a lot on guys. It's like, you have to say the perfect line, or you have to send the correct message, or you have to be like this, and this, otherwise she will reject you. If guys can actually get into a better mindset around that and think, you know what, actually, guess what? She has to be relatively relaxed. She has to have no major, probably drama recently in her life. She has to be receptive, open-minded, happy, communicative. Like, this is all stuff that she has to bring to the dating table to make that interaction a success. And that's actually not on the guys out there. That's actually important. Sorry, it's my dad in the background. What's actually important is that, you know, that you actually find you are an opportunity creator, but you really capitalize on those opportunities with women who are turning up from day one in the right headspace themselves. And so let's look at how that reflects. This is going to link a little bit into your conversation skills and also into your messaging. So,
and
for
real quick
the guys
here,
I
was just going to say about that. I really like that idea of, you know, one of the things of having standards, right? Because I think so many guys don't have standards. They're just willing to accept whatever. And what they don't realize is that, like, how they begin a relationship is how that the relationship is going to go. So even if they do get that girl, a lot of times, if they don't have any kind of standards and they're just accepting whatever kind of behavior, she's not really super interested, that they're already at a disadvantage. Whereas if the other partner is coming to the table excited, bringing something to the table, it's more balanced, and you don't want to get into a relationship anyway where someone has moderate interest or small interest. It's going to be held for the entire relationship.
Totally. And if you lose respect in a relationship, whether you're a man or a woman, it's game over. You know, that's it's just on one road to a bad relationship. That's also stopping you from accessing all those other opportunities that are out there. so this fits actually into this principle that I'm really into when it comes to thinking about how we can improve the dynamics between men and women, that will show up in how you message. So kind of like how I like to teach everyone actually, is there is always a technique, you know, there's always a kind of probably a better or more effective way of maybe saying things or phrasing things. But I don't like to teach people to be like technique heavy and like a little parrot, because you got to actually do what's right for you. And the irony is, if you get in a right mindset, or you have good rules of thumb or a good outlook on a subject, you will naturally start to make the right decisions in terms of how you actually communicate with people. So let's look at I'm going to take a really extreme example, just to highlight the point. And, you know, that guy that sends 5 messages in a row that all say, hey, 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 hey. And literally, I don't know any women who haven't had at least one of those guys on their social media. So what's going on for this guy right now is, and how does that make the woman feel? Well, he's basically showing that without any input from her, no investment, no time, no brain power on her part, just because she is physically attractive, it's like, that's it. She's got the golden ticket, and he's like, I'm here anytime. You know, I'm just reminding you I'm here. Hey, exactly. I'm here. So and also every time he sends another message, it's like, you know what? I don't mind that you ignored me then, or you were really mean. I don't care. Or maybe I do care, and I'm going to now write a really horrid message to you. You know, he's acting all on this. He's just acting like it doesn't matter what she says or does. She's got a pre-approval stamp from him, and actually, and he's going to ignore that. And what's that suggesting? Neediness. It's suggesting like, you know what? You're probably the only attractive woman that I feel like I've had any opportunity with recently. So I'm just going to, and because of that, I don't want to stop that opportunity happening. So I'm going to cling on in there, you know, even if I'm getting really next to nothing back, which also for the guy is demoralizing, hurts your self-esteem, and just sucks. For the woman, that communicates totally the wrong things about who you are as a man, right? Because she doesn't want to feel like, even if, let's be real, when I'm out coaching guys how to meet women in real life, obviously we go to a bar or a club or the daytime, they're going to see let's be realistic, there's quite a few women they're going to see during that session that they're going to be physically attracted to enough that they'll want to talk to her and explore if there's an opportunity. However, that doesn't really fit with women's narrative around how they expect a relationship to develop. Women actually a lot of the time think that men have a lot more of a plan for the dating process than guys do. A lot of guys are just going in the flow, talking to women, seeing how stuff turns out, playing things day by day. For her, she wants that what's the big romantic story for a woman? It's like, wow, this super high quality, high value man comes into my life, and you know what? He could have his pick of all of these women. And because I'm a woman, I'm really conscious of how many attractive women there are around me. There's loads, you know, but there was something about me that's not physical, but that's like about my personality and my vibe or how I communicated with him that made him pay special attention and focus to me.
Exactly.
So she needs to feel chosen by you. She can't feel chosen by you unless you give her an opportunity or unless she invests in the interaction. And by investment, I mean she has to talk to you, and we have to go beyond surface level communication. We can't just be in the realm of small talk. You know, she has to actually have a meaningful interaction. She has to feel that you acknowledge something in her, that's behavior, personality, contribution. And that's the reason you're moving things forward, not because she's hot. Good looks are really common, you know, but actually having that sense of connection is rare. So that's how you want to play things. So in terms of how this shows up in an area as simple as like messaging a woman online, what are then some important principles that we have to bear in mind? There is a logic sometimes in sending a first message that's more templatey but slightly personalized, just because you might be sending a lot of messages out. However, specific messages are going to work better. Being conversational in tone, avoiding any form of small talk, whether it's, hey, how are you? Or when you're talking about your job, don't say, oh, it pays the bills or it keeps me busy. You know, we really want to avoid any form of cliche or common small talky phrase when you're in communication with women, because they've had that conversation before. And it's an easy way, by changing that, you can start to stand out from the other guys.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially what you said about the selection. I think it was kind of funny. One of my coaching clients was actually telling me about, he had some success, and he brought a girl from a nightclub, and she had told him that night, she was like, I can't believe out of all the women here that you selected me, that why would you choose me, right? And he, said the wrong answer to that. Instead of just saying, you're amazing, whatever, he said, what? I'm surprised that I was able to get you. Don't say that. But it illustrated the point very clearly. That was what she like. It wasn't true. I mean, because the guy literally was like, he felt like he got lucky, but she wanted that narrative, and so he needed to just reinforce that narrative, because that's the one that she wanted, because that's how she wants to feel. She doesn't want to feel like, oh, this guy was walking around a nightclub looking for what girl was going to go home with him, and I was the one who was willing to. That's the worst narrative possible. That's the one that he reinforced instead of the one. But I think, it's good that you said that, because that is really important to think about, because I think, like you said, and that's why I've enjoyed your content so much, is because you're taking it from that other perspective, because you coach women as well. And so, and guys don't realize this, that the focus is often with a lot of game and pickup stuff is about how can I impress and how can I do that, instead of that perspective that you're bringing here, which is like, what is she thinking about the situation? Like, she wants that narrative of feeling like special, like she's earned something, like there was something in her that was, can you create that actual narrative? And so, so I agree with that 100%. And I think that's a great perspective to have. So.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny, because I also obviously have to play it back from the other perspective, because I will be, going out with women and breaking it down for them. I don't teach women to walk up to men and be like, hey, baby. Right. I teach them how to invite a man to come and say hello to them, which is totally different. The guy should be walking away from that interaction feeling that was his win and that was his idea, And for women, it's about explaining to them, it's not that, a guy goes into a room and he selects his one true love from the women that happen to be in there. He's just going about his normal everyday life, and he needs to most guys in the modern world need to have some, a pretty decent signal, a bit of a cue there, so that they feel like, okay, she's approachable, she looks like she's open to talking to me. And then if they get that, and it won't be the woman that he necessarily thinks, who he ends up, for instance, marrying. It's not necessarily the woman who he first thought was like the hottest girl in the club. It could be, but it might also be one of the many attractive women he saw, but the woman that was giving him that opening, who was actually communicating with him, creating approachability, and who was able to be receptive to what he was doing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I just to flip over from the other perspective, like for women that are watching this right now, 95% of the guys that I coach, that I talk to, have never in their life cold approached a woman. They've never in their life. That's the scariest thing that there is in their life. And so, like the 5%, they're out there and they learn what you're teaching and what I'm teaching, and they've overcome that fear. But the other 95% that are out there, if they're not getting an invitation, if they're not getting what, a lot of guys on YouTube, like they call the choosing signals, which I'm not a big fan of the choosing signal thing. Like, as far as guys, girls giving that is a smart idea, because you're gonna get guys that wouldn't approach to approach. But yeah, I think, from that perspective, it's amazing. I think sometimes when I've talked to women, they think that every guy just is like the 5% that approach, and they're like, I don't understand. And they don't realize that guys are literally like, if I were to rank what's the scariest thing in your life, higher than getting coronavirus, it would be talking to a girl that I don't know in a bar. And that's the reality. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and exactly. And what I think's interesting about that as well is, I like how you said it was the 5%, because for women, they think that their reality is, it's like they've got a selection bias towards the guy that proactively approaches in a way that they recognize as being obviously romantic or sociable and engaging. And because of that, they're like, oh my God, I keep meeting the same man, you know, or all guys like this, or he was seeing 5 other women, like what the hell? And in fact, it's because she's just not seeing all of the other men that are out there. They're not invisible. So another big kind of irony or gap that I find between how men and women view dating is men often feel obviously that women are living in an abundance of choice their whole lives.
Yeah.
And that men actually have to, you know, cultivate themselves, and often choice comes to them at a much later age than it does for women. You know, you might have to put in 10 years of hard work on themselves before getting any positive feedback. However, from the world of a woman, let's be clear about some things. Until she gets past a certain point of attraction with a man, so, and that will mean she's going to have interacted with him and kind of thought, oh, hey, this is kind of the guy that I could see myself dating. It doesn't count. So all those guys in her inbox, you know, or her online dating inbox, all those guys in the drafts of her DMs, to her, they don't count. It starts to count when you start to interact with her. And because so few men are able to interact with her, or actually are really proactive at being opportunity creators, it means she actually feels like there's this really small pool of guys. You know, women will often say things like, oh, I just haven't met anyone I actually liked for like 6 months. So she's not thinking, she doesn't realize that how many options she actually has. She's actually often in a real scarcity mindset around dating as well. And how you have to understand that as a man is to understand that, you know, whilst you might think there's intense competition, she doesn't really see it that way at all. And the goal really is, if 95% of guys are going to go that way in terms of how they're meeting women, the messages they send to women, how they communicate, how quickly they try and set up the date, you need to be in that 5% who's going in the other direction, because it's actually that point of difference that's going to make you really attractive as a man versus, you know, body fat percentage.
Right. Yeah. Now I have to push back a little bit on that, because I know a lot of guys in my audience are like, no, that's not true. A woman can, you know, go through that list of guys and she can get laid anytime that she wants. And I would agree with that, but I would say that that's not what they're looking for most of the time. Because when you can do that, maybe, you know, and you see it. I mean, young girls that figure out that they're really attractive, they go through that phase, and they, you know, but then they realize that they want something else, and then they're in the position that you're saying, unless you disagree. But I mean, that's what I've seen from experiences, that a lot of guys think, you know, because guys are thinking differently. They're thinking, okay, you know, if I could, you know, especially the guys that are in that 95% that have never cold approach, they're like, I just want to get laid, just one time, just, you know, that's it's like, that's it. Just like, I'll take whatever, you know, my standards are low, like, it's fine. Well, I can't even do that. And it's because of those things, because their standards low. Some of that is the reason why. But they're thinking, they're looking at these women that are on the dating apps that have all these messages, and they're like, any one of them, they could say, come over my house, but that's not how, you know. And I think that's maybe one of the most destructive things that we have today in society, with some of it caused by an extreme, you know, push towards feminism, is that we're not the same. It's not the same psychologically. And so that's a pushback I have to give you, because I know that everyone from my audience, all the guys are like, no, women can get laid anytime they want. And I would agree with that. It sounds like you would probably agree with that, but that's not the objective.
Yeah. Exactly. So I definitely agree. I'm definitely on the school of thought that men and women are different. I'm just going to establish that right now. And I don't think there's what's wrong with that. But I think that's fantastic. That's what makes our lives fantastic and interesting. And I love actually the difference between how we view the world. And we're so, when it works, we are so complementary. And it's the most amazing thing ever. I love it. And I think actually a lot of the time the coach I do with women might be encouraging them to re-engage a bit with their femininity and get back into that. And I hear for the guys out there, yes, if a woman was going to be like, although actually when women do approach men very directly, funny fact, the men do not react well. They think it's a joke or a prank. So when a woman is in a masculine, or they're thinking they're being punked. So when a woman is in a masculine role within the dating process, actually it doesn't usually create that much attraction as a broad rule of thumb. Yes, she can go out there and she could probably get a one-night stand pretty easily. However, how are women conditioned to think about dating? Let's look at this. Whilst let's a really crude, and we can argue about the rights and the wrongs of this, but that's not where I'm here today.
Right.
Generally, men are like, you know, he's got laid, high five, buddy. What do women get judged by? How much do you have a man, and how much does he love you?
Exactly.
You know, it's to totally different standards. That's why women, you know, single women, other stuff they'll come up with. First of all, it's in our language. You know, you're miss, a ms, a missus. You know, you immediately defined. And a lot of the time, women, the first question people ask them will be like, so are you seeing anybody? Have you met anybody yet? They don't say, how's the business going? You know?
Right.
And then straight after that,
how many
like,
notches are on your belt? Like,
yeah, they're just like, oh, you know, how's the love life? And then it's either, if there's nothing going on, it's like, oh, sorry, you know. And then if you have met someone, it's like, oh, great, what does he do? So it's like women are judged a lot by their ability to attract a man, keep a man, and have a man engaged with them. And that's not just I like something I'm really into. I probably don't have the scope of it in this YouTube video, but something that's interesting to think about is that it's not about judgment from men a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's about judgment from other women. Exactly. You know, and how they feel about their sense of self and their self-worth in terms of their social status within this broader social infrastructure that we've got going on. So a really simple example of that would be any guy who's approached a group of women in a bar or a club. And we know that's hard. Like, you know, a lot of the time I work with the guys, they're like, I'm just not comfortable approaching one woman yet. Don't make me approach three, you know, it's too difficult. What's most important is it's actually going to be how her friends are reacting and responding in that moment. 100%. That's what's telling you, because who does she care about there? She is probably not caring that much about this guy that she's just met, no matter how attractive she thinks he might be. Instead, she's looking at these close female friends whose opinions she values, and she's seeing how are they reacting. You know, do they accept this guy? Because actually my social bonds are really to them. So you might also find that how well women know one another affects things. You know, is she out having a drink with her really best friend who adores her and just like wants her to be happy? And so therefore, if a guy comes over and starts chatting, the best friend might be, you know what, I'm just going to go to the loo quickly. I'm just going to get some drinks. You know, the best friend might actually be helpful and constructive under some circumstances. And of course, other circumstances, which I'm sure all men watching this have come across. Yes. The women will be destructive to that relationship. But it's a good message, I think, to take home from that is actually for the guys out there, it's actually not all about you. A lot of this is to do with her. You know, her life setup, her social relationships. So whilst I'm massive, probably same as you about like, let's take personal responsibility. That's like for our part that we can play, let's play it to like 100%. Let's do our, you know, make the best of and do the best for ourselves. But then that also has to always come in with a balance of thinking, right, well, I actually, as you know, today's news probably suggests I can't actually control external reality. And there's a lot of other factors that I have to just come into a state of acceptance with in order to really progress.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to one of the guys I was coaching. We were talking about, I was like, you know, like guys will be like, if you meet a girl, you're at a bar or something, you'll be like, oh, you know, where are you staying? And it's like, oh, you know what? Man, like you can. I'll just sleep in my car. You can have my apartment. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'll just get out of here, right? Like it doesn't matter. Oh, you drove? That's fine. I'll walk home. I'll get a taxi, right? But it's like the complete opposite. For girls, it's like, okay, well, you know, oh, well, I'm here with my friend. Doesn't matter if you're the hottest guy in the world, the best, you know. Like if the friend is the thing, because that's it. Because it's like, all right, if she drove or something like that, or if it's not, you're done. Like you get the number and that's, you know, that's it. But if the friend says no, it doesn't matter how great of a connection you have. It doesn't matter what, you know, what happened. But I think it's hard because like I said, most guys, it's hard for them to understand because like I said, I mean, most guys will be like, yeah, whatever, you can take my car, take my room, take everything, you know what I mean? Here's $100, like go get her some food. Like that's how like guys would think about it. Whereas, you know, like you said, sometimes a friend could be helpful, but a lot of times it can be sabotage. Like, oh, you know, no one's getting late tonight, and that's how it's going. And you know, I don't like the guy like that. This guy, that this girl, she always gets all the attention. So, whatever, there's all those dynamics which complicate things. So I guess we should probably be wrapping this up pretty soon here.
I know, because unfortunately, I said my light is fading.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm going to be totally real with the listeners here. Like, I have decamped to rural France. So I'm not in my normal, nice YouTube space. I've got a really bad mic. So I am apologetic for that. I'm slowly descending into darkness. But I really hope that you've got some good stuff. And, I'll try and if you've got some questions and stuff, I'll try and hop into the comments and answer those from guys who are listening as well. But so do you want to get to some final words on dating in time of?
Yeah, I guess I'd say one last thing that I think that maybe you can provide some insight on, because now normally when I'm coaching guys, what I'm telling them is I'm like, okay, your job, the reason why you text or the reason why you send a message is to establish a date. Don't fuck around here. Don't try and be clever and all this shit, and don't have long conversations, because you're just going to be a friend at that point. You don't she has female friend, you're going to say something real quick to remind her about the conversation you had and what kind of a fun guy, this feeling that she had when she met you, and then you're going to maybe say one line of small talk, and then you're immediately establishing the time and the date so that you can move on, and you're not texting her after that except to confirm it on the day. I try to keep it very lean, because I know that everything else screws it up. But obviously that's not going to happen here, right? Because you're not going out to a bar, you're not going out to a place. I mean, can you even say can you invite someone over? I mean, there's not really activities. The only come over and let's play Scrabble. It seems pretty direct, though. Yeah, I don't know. What do you do?
Okay, so I'm totally the same viewpoint here, that you should move towards a date, and if not a date, a better form, get a more personal form of communication than messaging within the app. She could delete the app, she could lose your message. I don't know. There's stuff that can happen. So I think you want to be always on the front foot and progressing the interaction forwards, because you also remember your filter is you don't need a pen friend. You're actually looking for a woman who today is open to meeting a man and having some kind of dating experience. And there's going to be, for women as well, there'll be people on those apps who they want some attention, they're bored, or they tell themselves, I would love to meet someone, but they don't actually take any real action towards that in their lives. And you want to filter those people out. So I think, first of all, what you can do is you can suggest moving towards a better form of communication. So you can, if you know that the message conversation is going to go on longer, you can suggest, just suggest a phone number exchange. You also want to leverage any topic that comes up, presents itself in the conversation as a reason to go on the date. So it's the woman could be like, and this was an actual example that happened to one of my clients recently. The woman was saying something like, oh, I've just been doing some baking and stuff this weekend. You can then say, don't suppose you bring cookies to your first dates, wink. Even if you suggest it playfully, you're still immediately going towards the date. That's still your first point of call. So you're thinking, your mind, the question in your mind should be, how can I turn the topics of conversation that are coming up here towards let's go on a date? So she could be saying oh, I've been doing lots of home workouts and stuff during this outbreak, and then you could say something like, say you could joke and say, in another time, I'd suggest we go for we take a yoga class together, or we hit the gym together, or do a class. And then you could say, then I would follow that. If she's like, yeah, that sounds cool, and she seems to buy into the idea of the date, whether it's she's bringing a cookie, she's been into knitting lately, so you're like, do you offer scarves to your dates? Whatever way you've managed to swing the conversation towards the idea of a date, not the logistics, the idea. If you get a bit of, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. Guess what? You don't actually have to go to a fitness class, and she doesn't actually have to bring a cookie to the first date, but you've got her to agree to the idea of date in principle. Now you can follow this up with a suggestion that might actually work. So you can say, if I was dating particularly during this kind of time, you could say this might be totally inappropriate of me, or feel free to shoot me down. Okay, so you could just be vulnerable, but be courageous. It's kind of it's going to be very sexy if you own that. And you could say, I'd like to meet. walk in the park. You know, how about we go for a walk in the park? And if not, Skype date. You know, so you
Okay,
can
I like that. Okay.
give her, and it's about, you can just say, like, you just acknowledge, like, you can shoot this idea down if you want, you know, and then you could say, I think, for instance, walks in outside spaces are going to be a winner. I would also recommend for the guys that are using online dating apps, set those parameters close to home. People are not going to want to use public transport that much
Yeah.
if you're in a city. So you want to find someone who knows your, ideally, who can meet you in your local area and go for a walk around the block, because we are actually allowed to do that, and that's pretty safe and pretty okay still. And if not, you provide a second option, you know, if not, Skype date. And so by giving options on this occasion, I think you're actually just going to seem really socially aware, but you're still leading the interaction. And you know what? She might go for the Skype date or the Zoom date option because it feels a bit safer, whether that's on a biological level or if on a just a, I don't know this guy this well yet. If you have a great chat with her via Skype, you might just say, she might just be like, oh, I wish I'd gone for that. You know, I wish we'd gone for a walk now. I mean, you could be like, oh, well, hey, we still can. I was like, okay, it's a bit dark, a bit late for a walk. This may be wildly inappropriate of me, but we could do Scrabble. And I mean genuine Scrabble, you know.
I like that. Okay, yeah, I like that a lot. That's good.
Which we're always being playful. We're always acknowledging what's going on, but we're always keeping the momentum high in your interactions. Don't, just as you, like you said, John, don't be aimless with this. Don't just chat to her endlessly. Don't try and cover it up like what you're, you know, what you actually want. Instead, you need to think, I've got to actually filter these women for who is most open to what I have on offer here, and I value what I've got on offer. I'm a great guy. So what I'm going to look out for is the women who are going to be open to that. And when she seems open to it, my job is I'm going to lead and I'm going to capitalize on this opportunity.
Perfect. I like that. And I really like the idea of, I call those disarming phrases. Like my favorite phrase to use all the time is like, you know, I'm a really big asshole, but. Because like you can get away with murder if you say that before you do, because you can say whatever you want to say after that and people will excuse you because you're a really big asshole, because you already said that you're a really big asshole. Like, no, obviously that's probably not the best one to say in these situations. but yeah, you know, just saying, you know, I could be totally out of line here or something to acknowledge the awkwardness or the weirdness or the boldness of the statement. I love that. That's great. And the idea of the Skype dates, I think that's a great idea. And yeah, that's perfect. That's really good advice. I think this is really going to help a lot of guys that are stuck in the quarantine. So yeah. All right. So guys, make sure that you take a look at Haley Quinn's YouTube channel. You know, subscribe there. I'll put a link in here, and we'll have some more content coming out. If you're watching this, we're going to have something coming out. Make sure, if you haven't signed up to the email list, just take the Bulldog quiz or go to bulldogmindset.com and get on there, because I'm gonna have something for you coming out here, because I've got it. You know, Haley's stuff is really good. You know, I've gone through it, and I want to share that with you guys more. So if you want to hear more about this and you want her to come back and get some more tips, especially I'd love to get in a conversation about actual, like, real life approaches and stuff, which we can definitely do. So definitely make sure that you get on the list, subscribe, and keep your eyes peeled, because we're gonna have some more content for you.
Awesome. And thank you so much for having me, John. It's been awesome. Thank you so much. And cheers to all the guys out there. Keep your spirits up and be proactive during this time. Accelerate.
Awesome. Thank you.